The heels didn't sound like mine when they hit the marble. They sounded like somebody else's life. Click, click, click. Too sharp for a woman who hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time in months. Too rich for a mother who still didn't know how to hold her own baby without feeling like she might break. And then I stopped. Because a man with rolled sleeves and a jaw like he'd chewed through harder nights than this was standing in my nursery with my daughter in his arms, bottle tilted just right. Voice low and steady like a river after rain. And she was peaceful, more peaceful than I'd ever seen her. You know what I mean. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull rank. To remind the entire city that my name, Avery Locke, still meant doors opened and people moved. But my throat closed up and all that came out was, "Who are you?" Like I'd walked into my own home and found a stranger wearing calm like a uniform, and somehow it fit better than it did on me. Yeah, that happened. He said his name was Caleb Knox. Temp from the agency, last-minute call, no fuss. And he didn't flinch when I stepped closer the way most people do around money. He just kept his eyes on my daughter, Maya, and said, "Easy now." Almost to her, not to me, as if I wasn't the one paying. As if the only person who mattered in that room weighed 8 pounds and trusted the warm bottle more than the world. And I hated that I couldn't hate him for that, because she was breathing in slow waves I had never been able to get from her. Like the ocean decided to come sit in our penthouse and hush the whole skyline for once. "You don't touch her," I said, but the edge had already dulled. And he glanced at me with that look people who've been judged too many times carry behind their eyes. Not angry, just tired and sure at the same time. And he told me she was crying too hard when he arrived. That sometimes it's not the milk, sometimes it's the room, the air, the way your hands shake even if you think they don't. Sometimes they just need to know someone's not going anywhere. And the word safe slipped in there so casual it made my ribs ache because I couldn't remember the last time it belonged to me. "What makes you think you know what she needs?" I pushed. Because if I couldn't control the night, I could at least control the questions. And he said, "Because I've been here alone, and the kind of quiet that follows a real answer moved between us." He didn't tell me the whole story, just enough. Single dad, learned fast or break. No luxury to panic, the kind of lines people only earn by living them. And the bottle clicked gently against the table when he set it down, and he draped a blanket over Maya with a tenderness that wasn't performance, just muscle memory. Let me back up a sec. If you've never watched a man who knows what he's doing with a newborn, it messes with your idea of everything. I grew up with staff, with polished yes and immaculate silences. But none of them ever got that little sigh from Maya, that sweet surrender where their tiny body melts into a chest like it's a dock, and they are finished fighting the tide. And I heard myself asking his story when my script said I should be dialing the agency to confirm credentials, and he gave me scraps. Used to wear a badge before his boy was born. Thought he could save the world, and learned saving one life in the dark at 3 a.m. can feel bigger than a precinct. And I didn't mean to look away, but I did. Because my phone lit up with the board chair's name again, and the panic that follows power when it remembers it's still held together by people who don't sleep. "You're ignoring someone important," he said without heat, and it landed because nobody talks to me like that. Not anymore. And before I could snap, a knock sounded like a mistake at the front door. 3 hard raps you feel in your bones, and I said stay, but he was already there when I reached the hall, body quiet, hand on the frame, not blocking me. Just close enough to become a wall if the night required it. And I don't know how I noticed it, but the baby monitor was tucked in his other palm like it mattered as much as a weapon to him. And then I cracked the door and 2 suits tried to push a story into my home. Debts, my late husband, numbers that don't belong in a nursery. The kind of polished menace that says we prepared for this conversation. You didn't. Caleb didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff up. He just gave them a clock, 3 seconds. And men who pretend not to feel fear hate clocks, because time makes liars out of them. They backed off, but not enough. Left a promise hanging like fog. This isn't over. And it wasn't bravado when Caleb said they weren't here for a discussion. They were measuring the house, the locks. The woman standing in a doorway with her guard down. And that's leverage, not finance. And the truth of it found my hands. They were shaking. I told him they'd been circling. That I kept thinking if I didn't feed it, it would die. And he said people like that don't starve, they wait. When Maya was down, he stayed, jacket off. Posture that made furniture look like it was built softer around him. And I asked why he didn't leave, and he shrugged like one more hour of his life wasn't expensive. Like being decent didn't need a reason. And I said, you talk like a man who's done this before, not babysitting. The other thing, the standing between. And he didn't tell me names, but he didn't have to. The shadows on his face had names of their own. And then the building's night doorman, Mr. Ortiz, texted me a grainy frame from the lobby. Those two had pre-approved guest passes logged under an internal code I recognized. My executive assistant's routing, not mine. Twist the knife right there. Because trust is loud until it breaks. And then you can hear every small lie it used to cover. I wanted to fire everyone, to call 6 lawyers, to move, to burn the penthouse down to the rebar and let them try to collect ash. But Caleb said, breathe. And I did, slowly, and he mapped out simple, unfancy steps like he was building a dock out of the night. Call the agency, confirm him, loop building security, document, turn the smart lock logs from pretty app into evidence. And for once I let somebody else have the whiteboard in my head. You know what I mean? The relief that sneaks up on you and you almost don't trust it because you've been carrying the whole piano alone and now someone says they've got the heavy end for a minute. The agency confirmed an I've polite sentences. He was who he said he was, booked by someone using my office line, which meant my assistant Lena didn't just open a door, she chose the night. She knew where Maya slept and how to get me at my most breakable. And I stood at the window with the city pouring itself across the glass and tried to decide if betrayal tastes like metal or salt. And Caleb said a thing I'm not sure I earned. Sometimes people underestimate how hard it is to be the one the wolves want to circle. Sometimes they envy the house and forget the woman in it. And it made me angrier than the suits because envy breeds sloppy plots and sloppy gets children hurt. We set a trap that wasn't about drama. Just adult boundaries with receipts. Security flagged the passes. The lobby cameras pivoted 2 degrees. I sent Lena a message at 1:13 a.m. asking her to bring me a file at sunrise. And when the suits came back, because of course they did, the key card they tried didn't sing. It screamed, access denied. And the building manager stepped out of a dark office like a teacher catching seniors cheating, and I watched from the hallway camera while Caleb stood beside Ortiz, arms folded loose. Not threatening, just finished with this part of the story, and squad lights washed the marble again. Different uniforms this time. Real ones. And there's a moment when bad confidence turns into clumsy negotiation. We've all seen it. And the officer said the magic words, you can explain downtown. And the elevator doors closed on the suits' faces like a curtain we didn't clap for. It should have felt like victory right there, and in a small way it did. But the truth of nights like this is they don't really end. They recede. They leave a tide line you'll trip over later when you least expect it. And I walked back into the nursery where it still smelled like warmed milk and the ghost of Caleb's humming. And Maya stretched in her sleep and made that tiny O with her mouth babies make when they dream about something only they know. And I realized I wasn't angry at the world for a minute. I was tired enough to tell it the truth. I can't do this alone. Not like this. Not tonight. I asked him to stay, not just because men had knocked on my door with rehearsed sentences, but because his presence had done what money couldn't. It steadied the room. And he searched my face like he was checking the foundation, not the paint. And he nodded once. All right. And we didn't say what that meant. Not yet. The city hummed like it always does when it thinks it owns you. And for a breath, I didn't belong to it. Morning made the marble look less like a stage and more like a floor again, and Lena arrived with a folder and too much perfume. And when I slid the printed logs across the table, her expression collapsed from confident to careful. Excuses trying to outrun consequences. She said she thought they were lawyers. She said the line was for a courier. She said she didn't know. And the thing about being the wealthiest person in a room is you're always tempted to make people smaller with one sentence. But I'm trying to be a mother who teaches her daughter the difference between power and strength. So I let the evidence talk, and HR finished the paragraph. And I watched the door close and didn't miss the scent she wore. I could tell you I fired everyone and sued everyone and slept 8 hours that night. But life isn't a press release. It's a baby at 2:47 a.m. who decides the bottle is suddenly an enemy again. It's a handoff in the kitchen where a former cop laughs because I finally burped her right without looking like I was defusing a bomb. It's a woman who was married to a man who made debts like complicated shadows and didn't leave enough light behind. And it's a single dad who knows that some nights are about staying, not solving. You know what I mean. The truth is, the satisfying part wasn't the elevator doors or the arrests or the cold professionalism of a letter drafted before breakfast. The satisfying part was the small scene after, the three of us in the nursery with the city blinking like a slow heartbeat. Maya dozing on Caleb's shoulder while I finally sat on the floor in a dress that cost too much and let my back hit the wall, and he didn't fill the silence. He just kept time with his breath until mine matched it. And for a shot-length second that would look gorgeous in a film. Sun coming up like it forgave everything, steam off a forgotten mug curling. The faintest smile at the corner of a baby's mouth. I believed we might actually be okay. And then I remembered. Those men have bosses, leverage has layers. Justice on paper doesn't always reach elevator lobbies, and wealth can feel like a lighthouse to ships that don't want to dock, they want to ram the rocks. So here's your open door. Your place to argue with me in the comments of your own life, because I'm still deciding. Do I use every tool I have to crush the network that circled my child, scorched earth? Or do I keep it clean and let the system do what it promises, knowing promises break? Or is the right line somewhere, Messier? Where you protect your home without becoming what you hate. Tell me where you stand on that. What's right? What's wrong? Where justice ends and survival begins. Because I chose to keep Caleb on and build a fence you can't see, but you feel when you touch my door, and I sleep a little easier, but not easy. Not yet. So what would you have done? And what does your answer say about the neighborhood we're all trying to live in together?